Hey, what's up, Compact Crew? It's Nate and Richie, and it's been about 14 years since we've done a live video. But let's be honest here, man. The last show that was on was Fear of the Walking Dead, and while we have grown to really enjoy that show, not as many people watch it. But The Walking Dead, on the other hand, we're going to talk about that. We normally try to do these live after the show, but due to certain circumstances, it was just way too late. Like Nate didn't even get to watch it until like 11:30. So that was out of the question. But we talk about it right now, and we're also going to discuss the crossover between Fear of the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead. But first, let's go ahead and give a real quick review over Season 8, Episode 1, which happens to be the 100th episode, titled Mercy. Nate, what was your overall thoughts over the premiere of The Walking Dead?
It was good. I mean, like we talked about, there's not a whole lot happened. Like it was a pretty big episode, but it wasn't like, just these unbelievable moments. Like it was really cool. It's good to see everybody getting their, getting them back in the groove, taking out some saviors. I loved, Rick, he was back to old Rick. We saw him kind of getting that mojo back last season, but we really saw Rick at full Rick mode. Daryl, same thing. Everybody's just taking out saviors, getting into it. I thought it was interesting seeing the flashbacks. I thought that was kind of cool. Or the flash forwards. You really don't know what those things are, or just thoughts in Rick's head. I thought was interesting because I actually had a person yesterday who had saw it, who had in his mind, because of the way it was split up, that none of that took place. And what I mean by none of it, the attack on the sanctuary. Like he thought that was all a dream because of the way it ended. And I was like, no, man, that took place. That really did.
Maybe not a dream, but an actual like him foreshadowing, like this is what I visualize is going to happen.
Right. Like that's what he thought because of the way it was shot. And honestly, I haven't gone back and watched it a second time, but you're right. Just the bouncing around could have confused some people, but all that he was seeing, what to me comes across like maybe that's the future he wants, or that's the future that we're going to get eventually. Although it seems like Rick ages like 30 years in like 3 years.
Yeah, it's weird. I get kind of what he's saying. There was a moment when towards the end of the episode, they did a flashback. Like I say a flashback, but they went back to the beginning where he was giving his speech again.
Right.
And so I, for a second, was like, wait a second. Like, was he just visualizing that attack? I would be highly disappointed if that was, and then we've got I don't think it is either, but
it wouldn't make any sense because of where, like, what happened with Gabriel, where he's at now, like that whole situation just it wouldn't make any sense.
Right. Cause that would mean Rick would have to visualize like, yeah, then Gabriel's going to go save, I forgot, just lost his name. What's his name? Oh man. Gregory. Went to save him, and then he double-crossed him. And I don't think so. I do think we saw 3 timelines, me personally, because when they showed Rick with the red eyes, and I felt like that's present time, and then the initial battle was kind of past tense, and he was remembering back like how it started and what they were doing. And I feel like Rick was at that moment thinking about the past and thinking about the future, kind of weighing his options like, hey, this is all we've gone through. It's worth it. Like we had to go through this to get to the future I've got envisioned in my mind. Like I personally just kind of think that because that means something big has probably happened.
Right.
Like either, some kind of substantial loss or maybe I won't say a victory, but I don't know. That's just kind of my thoughts because it did seem weird the way it was broken up. But I thought it was a good episode. Nothing crazy over the top special. I will say this I thought was interesting, Nate. And all the previews we saw, like the little that I kept seeing, I felt like a good majority of those clips we saw in the trailer were in this episode.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a lot of clips where Carl's walking, Daryl's shooting the barrels, obviously them in the shootout, them with the cars riding around, like the speeches, obviously, even from Rick and Gabriel. Mm-hmm. Them with the horde of walkers, them on the bridge with the Twizzlers. What's her name didn't get to do anything in this episode, but chew a Twizzler and watch her watch. But I don't know. That's exciting to me because the trailer looked really good. And
yeah, I mean, they did it. That's kind of like, there's probably, like you said, like the trailer was probably 90% of this episode.
Yeah.
Like bits and pieces, which is good because that means they're not showing us too much, which they've never really been bad about. They've never done that. They're always pretty good about giving us just enough to get us kind of excited, which really gets you excited to think that there's a whole lot more to happen. We really don't have any idea what it is. I mean, besides from like obviously following the comics and kind of having a general idea of how that's going to play out. But, you know, they like mixing it up. They like doing some stuff a little bit different, which is what I like so much about it, because I'm already, you know, I've read the comics. You know, I kind of already know what's going to happen, but I like the idea that every once in a while they mix things up, or they do something kind of different, which is perfect because this segues into what we want to talk about now, which is the crossover.
Wait, before we get that, I want to ask one other thing before we get to the crossover, because I do want to talk about the crossover, and that is, what was one of your favorite moments overall from episode 1? What did you like most? Maybe not necessarily a moment, but what was
the part that made me laugh out loud and got me excited, because it was like, yeah, that's what I would do, was when Rick let that walker loose on that dude while he was trying to talk crap to him about he's gonna kill you, he's gonna kill Carl and all this other stuff, and instead of just killing him, he just went and let that walker loose on him. I thought that I laughed out loud. I was like, yeah. I was like, that's what I'd have done too. Good job, Rick.
I like one, how everybody has got their mojo back, right? Like, we opened up pretty much with Morgan just stabbing a dude and then just popping him in the head. So like, people are over their little fear killing, like they're on board. We got this. Like you said, Rick being back to old Rick, like you could see in his face, even when he stabbed a dude in the stomach before he let the walker on him, it was just this look in his eyes like, we got to handle business. Now, I like when Rick was counting down and he was just like, you want me to count? All right, I'll count. And then like you could just see the look in his face where he just got mad when he hit the gun like that, and just 7, like old school gangster style on him. But yeah, it was awesome. Very good episode. I can't wait to see what's going on inside the sanctuary with those people. But now let's get on to the crossover, because I had a very interesting theory. Nate may have punched a hole in it, and we're going to discuss it. But it's going to be spoilers, because we're going to talk about some stuff that's happened in the comics that has not happened in the show yet. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen in the show, but just to give a forewarning, this is theorizing. It's uncharted territory, right? Because you're crossing over a show that doesn't exist in the comics at all, and maybe bring some characters over. So with that being said, Nate, let's go ahead and talk about this crossover.
Okay, so to kind of lay the groundwork for what we would expect you kind of have to understand what's going to happen this season to kind of have a general idea. And the general idea is that All Out War is going to end, and then right after All Out War ends, which is when they finally, defeat Negan, you're going to have a time jump. In the comics, it was about a year, maybe a little bit longer of a time jump, where you get to see after. You don't get to see what happens after, but basically the war's over. Negan's defeated. The Sanctuary is now a part of their group, and now you skip a year later to see the future of everything they've built. Okay, that's what happens in the comics, which is what makes you feel like you're seeing the little kind of flash forward look that Rick's getting. He's got Judas. She's older. She's talking about this. What was she said? Like a big festival they're going to have, which was something that does take place in the comics. They're having a big festival and stuff like that in that time jump. So it's kind of like you see the little time. So you're thinking, okay, so there is going to be a time jump. Now on the show, it looks like Rick ages 30 years and his daughter looks like she's somewhere between 3 to 5 years older. So they could do it
like Santa Claus.
Yeah, like they could do a huge time jump in the show compared to the comics, which would be fine. But you got to understand that, because that's where the whole idea of this crossover kind of gets interesting and also a little hazy, because you're not really sure how this is going to play out. Now, on Talking Dead, after the show, they had the 2-hour-long Talking Dead. They mentioned it to Kirkman, and Kirkman said that it was going to take place in 2018. And he did not specify, but he said either it's going to happen at the end of Walking Dead going into Fear the Walking Dead, or at the end of Fear the Walking Dead going into season 9 of The Walking Dead. Then Scott M. Gimble, who's now also the executive producer on Fear as well as Walking Dead, said it's going to happen sooner than later. That's all he said. So to us, that makes it feel like it's going to happen possibly at the end of this season going into Fear.
You would think, right? Because if it's definitely happened in 2018, and if it's happening sooner rather than later, then that's the first scenario, meaning the end of The Walking Dead.
But they also could be saying that to throw people off.
Yeah, which it doesn't matter. Like if you don't cross over, like why fake a hype? Because you know what I'm saying? Like people are going to watch The Walking Dead. I think it makes more sense to put a character from Fear into The Walking Dead to help build up hype for Fear. Mm-hmm. For those of you who have not been watching Fear has actually gotten really, really good. The first
really good
several seasons, episodes were slow and it was hard to get into, but now the character's been developed, and the last probably 3 episodes have been on par with any Walking Dead episodes as far as I'm concerned. Like they've been they've been really, really good. I'll say that. They've been really good episodes.
They hit their stride is what they did. They found the way. They found the best way to tell that story. They found the best way to kind of bring people into it, and then just like pushed it. And they've done really good. That show it's 10 times better than it was the first season or 2.
For sure.
10 times better. It's at least on par with some of the best of The Walking Dead. Now, obviously, you are more invested in The Walking Dead because it's been on for longer. So you're more invested in the characters, which, again, is kind of one of the things that this crossover makes sense to kind of mix things up a little bit. Again, to draw more people to Fear and vice versa. Like, oh, man, hey, guys, let's just do a crossover. Something I remember someone asking, are we ever going to see a crossover? Literally, when they announced Fear. And they said, I don't know, maybe down the road. Yeah. Well, guys, it's down the road and it's here, and that's what makes it interesting.
So here was my theory based off of that, and basically, for people who don't watch Fear, it pretty much follows one family. I mean, it's got a lot of good characters in it, but you got 3 main characters. You got the mom, Madison, her daughter, Alicia, and then her son, Nick, and they all kind of have their abilities and their stories sometimes separate and come together. They have grown and they have gotten stronger as the seasons progress. And in this one of the last episodes, there's a scene where Alicia's talking about having long hair and somebody's trying to get her to cut her hair. And they kind of make a big deal about it. Like, you need to cut your hair. I'm not cutting my hair. And they made a really big deal about her doing that. And my thought was that she will end up being Alpha Nate, which is the leader of the Whisperers, which is a group that we should be getting introduced to at the end of War, which is another group that walks with walkers. Right?
Right. Yeah, the Whisperers, they basically take the skin of the dead and wear it and then walk with the walkers, kind of like what Nick does, but you wear the skin of the walkers.
Instead of just the blood.
Right. So, and if you... I mean, it honestly, the only reason why I thought about it, that kind of like he said, I might have shot a hole in it, was in the comics, she has a daughter who's roughly the same age as Carl. And this daughter, it kind of leads to them finding the Whisperers because she, gets captured, and that's how this all takes place. Now they can do whatever they want with this. The daughter doesn't necessarily have to be her biological daughter. She could have just taken care of her and helped her out. It might not be her daughter. It could just be some other girl. Because at this point, Carl is so much older than he seems in the show than he was in the comics. So the age thing is something that they can definitely play with.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be. But the idea that you would be seeing the story of a character in a whole nother show, the history of a character, to then be introduced in The Walking Dead as a villain, something that the show has started to kind of do better with. Like they gave you a lot more backstory with Dwight in the show that they ever did in the comics. They yet have really given any backstory to Negan, but they just recently did that in the comics after him being in the comics for so long. So it makes sense for them to kind of hold out any kind of backstory to Negan for later on in the show. I mean, they could do a whole episode of Negan, like all of just his backstory, and that would cover the entire what basically happened.
How genius would it be for you to, how do you top Negan? Like, how do you top Negan as a villain and, his somebody that you care about, that you kind of like, but you hate? I think it is you have a whole show dedicated, without you realizing it, to a bad guy that's a good guy in this show, and watching them progress and feeling for them like, man, do you know what she's been through? Do you know what she's done? Do you see her story progress to all of a sudden be like, boom, she's now a villain. So now you're really torn because you're like, crap, I like this person. It makes sense. I understand why she is the way she is. And you kind of get torn between two parties. I think that would be awesome. Now, how cool would it be? You're talking about there's a girl right now. Carl likes, is it Edith? Is that her name?
Yeah, well, yeah, sort of, yeah.
Do they?
But I'm just saying, like, yeah, they definitely.
Is she in the comics? Is she in the comics?
No,
she's not. Okay, so what happens if? Because there was a little chemistry there between her and Carl. What happens if something happens to Edith where she ends up splitting off and getting taken in by an Alicia or something like that? What if that was the cross? What if that was it? What if Alicia pops up and Edith has been, ran, something happened to her, something bad, and she ends up meeting up with Alicia, and Alicia takes her in, and that's all we see.
Well, and Edith is kind of filling the gap of what's her name? What was the little girl that went missing in season 2? Carol's daughter?
Man, don't ask me.
I can't remember Carol's daughter. It's been so long. She's not dead in the comics. Okay, she didn't die. But Carol's
got you.
Okay, Carol's been dead. Carol has developed into her she was so awesome that Carol hit a whole nother level. In the comics, Carol was not awesome. They made her into something that is beyond. But her daughter was still Sophia. Sorry, there we go. Now I'm on Sophia's still alive. So Enid is now kind of playing the Sophia part.
Okay.
In the show, because Sophia kind of is adopted by Maggie, and Maggie kind of takes care of her, and you can already see Enid kind of like hanging out with her and staying at the top. So she's kind of taking that spot. So it's possible, but then at the same time, they could introduce a whole nother character very easily, and it not really matter. Because it
could be nobody. It could be a nobody character, just enough to like freaking cameo almost. So this is the height of extreme. We're like trying to blend two shows because we want to see craziness, but it could end up being nothing.
It could be something real simple as what we saw like this past week when Carl gave food to that guy. It could turn out that guy shows up in fear. It could be something as simple as that. And honestly, I know they haven't built up the hype. Maybe us as fans have built the hype up more because they've only really talked about it a few times. But if that's what it would be, if that's what it is, something simple like that, I'll be majorly disappointed.
Oh, super disappointed. Because like you said, I want to see something big. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Do you think it's going to be a big crossover? Or you think it's going to be something small, just to, like an homage, like, oh, this guy's in fear, that's cool, they tie together, and then that's it, they stay separated. I personally would really like to see them blend or see a major character come over to The Walking Dead. That's kind of our thoughts. We are very excited about season 8. Season 7 was mixed on reviews on how people thought about it. Thought it was a little slow, a little boring. Hopefully that pays off in this season. It looks like it's going to be nice, fast-paced, action-packed, and a lot going on. So, guys, that's the review. That's our thought over the crossover and kind of what we would like to see. Man, that's it. And until next time, which will hopefully be Sunday night, we out.
See you guys later.